So I hate Xenoblade Chronicles 3's ending, and that really hurts to say, but there might be a caveat, and we'll talk about that. Hello, everybody, it's your boy Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming here today. Let's talk about what I thought was going to be my game of the year until the ending. Okay, I'm going to start off right off the bat by saying everything I'm about to say is subjective. Duh. The reasons I don't like the ending for Xenoblade 3 are very subjective. Because do I know what the theme, do I know what the message was? Yes, I know what they were going for. Do I think they told it in a decent way? Sure, I do. My problem is, I just hate how they did it. I just do not like that ending at all. But again, there's a caveat, and we'll get to that. So the problem for me with Xenoblade Chronicles 3's ending is that, to me, it feels like it invalidates everything we did up to that point. All the world building for Ionios, the relationships between Kevin and Agnes, all those side stories, all those side quests, helping people be able to move on, it all feels invalidated because we took all their choice away and said, nah, we're gonna keep going with Origin. And I get that the world was going to end with Annihilation events. I still hate this ending. So going into Xenoblade 3, my biggest concern, being a big fan of Xenoblade 1 and 2, was that that 3 was going to recontextualize 1 and 2 and quote-unquote ruin what those games did for me. That was my biggest concern going into 3. So, good news, 3 didn't do that. So, 1 and 2 for me are still preserved. And I like how we got a little bit of development for 1 and 2. Like that little poster we got with, not poster, like the postcard we got with the Xenoblade 2 crew. I like that. Thought it was really touching. It was nice to see Rex all grown up. And to see Poppy at the very end, chef's kiss. But my problem is, it just feels like, what was the purpose of 3? What was the purpose of putting all those hours in to invest in this world for it all to just disappear? And yes, I get that's what they were going for. That to escape the endless now, you have to be willing to sacrifice what you like to move into the future. Slight issue, I now have zero reason to ever go back to this game or to do any of the side content. Because the message of the game is that you can't be hung up on the game. Is that you have to be willing to move forward. And that you can't get hung up on what you built in Ionios. Because it all just disappears. Look, it's a personal thing, but I just can't stand endings where the entire story happens in a simulation or in a moment, and then the end just cuts to reality and life goes on, which is exactly what 3 did. It always feels unrewarding to me and makes me lose any and all interest to reinvest in that world for the side content or completionism stuff. Because there's no point, because we know it's all meaningless. Because the only thing that mattered was Noah and crew being willing to just move on with their life. And to let go and let everything go as it should with Origin. There's a chance, right, with the post-credit scene. Because we go back to this other thing I hate. I just do not like these obscure endings, like the post-credit scene. Normally, the post-credit scenes for Xenoblade games are one of my favorite scenes in the entire game. This one, it just cuts back to Noah and squad, back in their world, after Origin activate. And we just see them move on, and then he hears what could be Mio's flute playing, and then he just disappears in the crowd. Literally vanishes. So maybe that's foreshadowing the DLC? The DLC will... That's the caveat, the DLC. The DLC will make or break how I feel about Xenoblade 3. Because right now, they're quote-unquote hinting at the fact that no one might remember Ionios and what happened. And there were a few clues throughout the game that give credence to that idea. And that maybe they will remember all the lessons that they've learned. If they do that with the DLC and that it's a sequel to 3, and it follows up on the crew, then maybe I'll like it. I will say this right now. If the DLC is another prequel, and it's just for the founders, I will not care about that. Because the entire purpose of 3 was to move on from Ionios. That was the entire idea, is that you cannot be caught up in this perpetual now. You have to be willing to move on. Going back and rehashing that world, I don't care about it. Because it goes against the theme of 3. And sure, the theme is a good one. It's an important message to have. I understand what they were going for. I just can't stand endings like this. Because honestly, an hour after I played the game, I made a connection. I'm like, wait a minute, this is just Kingdom Hearts 1's ending. Like, if you play this cutscene where they're, like, running apart from each other, and you just, like, play simple and clean in the background, it's the same freaking ending, pretty much. There's a few differences, but, like, the thing with Kingdom Hearts 1's ending is there's future games to go about it. They don't just forget each other. So there's still lessons that those characters were imparted with. The story still developed. All of this just happened in a moment, and unless they clarified in the DLC, they just forgot everything. That ruins the entire experience for me. It really does. And there's just so many other plot threads of Xenoblade 3 which makes me believe that maybe this is just copium on my part, right? Like, maybe I'm just coping, but there's so many plot threads that just make me believe that the DLC has to be a sequel follow-up. Like, what was the point of Riku? Like, over the entire course of the game, he has this knowledge that seemingly no one else has. He's shown to be, like, this mentor character, and as if he has some, like, higher purpose. And just nothing comes about that. Like, was I just, like, overthinking those sections? Was I just, like, overthinking those scenes? I don't think I was. It just feels like that story with Riku went nowhere. And, like, the diary chapter transitions, right? Like, what was the purpose of those? Are they just so that when you do a New Game Plus or something, and you see those scenes, you're like, oh yeah, this is Mio after Origin, like after the end of the game, barely being able to remember what happened. Which, again, if that's how it is, that maybe that can salvage the ending, is that they still somehow, because they touched Origin, or they were Interlink, or they were Ouroboros, or whatever, that they can somehow still remember bits and pieces of the world, and maybe the DLC is them trying to come together, or something. I don't know, like, maybe, if that's the case, it can salvage the game for me. But if the story for Xenoblade 3's cast is literally just, and they forgot everything and they move on, that sucks to me. Because they just forget every lesson that they were imparted with. It ruins all that development, all that world building, all those connections that you're supposed to care about in an RPG with a bunch of side content, and nullifies all the importance of all of that. It just sweeps the legs from under that. Why would I go back and do any of the side content? Because none of it matters. None of it. I just don't get it. Like, I understand why people like the ending. I understand why people say it's a well-written ending. I'm not going to dispute that. It's different strokes for different people. Like, we all have our preferences. Some people may really like this ending, and your opinion is no less valid than mine. I can only just explain why I don't like the end. But I will say, there's one aspect to it that I do find kind of interesting, and that's how the worlds are like opposite, are like trying to always go towards each other and like attracted to each other. And at the very end, it was Noah and Mio, Lance and Senna, and Tyon and Uni that gravitated towards each other similarly. I thought that was a nice little twist. But even then, with the core cast of characters, like, what happened with the pacing after Chapter 5? What happened to it? Like, Lance and Senna, that pair got barely any development together. They got, like, one cutscene or two. Like, not nearly as much as Uni and Tyon, or not nearly as much as Mio and Noah. Like, what happened with them? And, like, outside of, like, two main sections, Noah's just kind of, like, he feels like more of a faceless insert protagonist than Rex or Shulk did. I easily prefer Shulk and Rex to Noah for a lot of the games. Noah had his moments, and when he had those moments, like at the end of Chapter 5 and the beginning of Chapter 6, and when he was confronting N in Chapter 7, those were very high points for Noah. But outside of that, he was just kind of bleh to me. So I have this, like, Word document of, like, all my thoughts as I was having them last night, and I just, like, kind of threw it all on the page, so I'm just going through it. So this video is going to be a little bit rambly, but Xenoblade 3 as a game was really good. The journey was really good. The problem for me is when an ending to the journey always undermines the journey itself. Sure, you can have a theme or an important message to tell, and sure, that may work for me in a different medium. But when it's in a video game, and I dedicated 130 hours into that game, and the theme is that the entire journey didn't freaking matter in the end, none of that side content mattered, none of it was supposed to be, that just sucks to me. All those relationships that were formed, meaningless. All those inter-colony developments that we had, meaningless. None of it mattered, at least to me. And even then, what I always like about Xenoblade 3, but Xenoblade in general, is that it has this common theme of tackling the future and why it's important, but each game does it in a different way. With Shulk, he gives up the ability to create a universe of his own design in lieu of making one without gods so that people can control their own destiny. In Xenoblade 2, there is no Elysium, essentially, because it's all just ruins. There is no perfect paradise. The world is dying, and the world's power of the conduit has to be used up to recreate the universe as they march into an undetermined future in a brand new world. They essentially have to give up what they were doing to step into the future. Xenoblade 3 is saying that you can't live life in the present all the time, and getting stuck in a rut can be detrimental if you aren't willing to move forward into an uncertain future. Each world goes on as it was before, separate and maybe distant. And it's saying that, yeah, there's this endless now, and you have to be okay with sacrificing your own happiness to keep moving forward. Like, I get that. That's a good message. It's a good theme. It's just how it's conveyed to the player, to me, didn't land for me. Because the other games covered similar ideas, but didn't have me feel so unfulfilled in the ending. And here's the thing that gets me. I don't even know if I would have preferred the idea that at the end of the game, both worlds rejoined to one another, and they created a new world. Because it could potentially compromise the endings of the first two games. And it's not even that much of a storytelling thing for me. I just don't like this type of story where it all just ends at the very end. Where it was all like a simulation or like a parallel universe and you all wake up and no one remembers anything. Like, I understand what they were going for and how they executed on that idea. I just freaking hate the idea itself. Because like I said before, it just feels like to me all that development, all that time, now means nothing. Because it's all gone unless we get a follow-up, and maybe we will. Like, maybe the lessons that these characters learned will carry on with them post-Origin. Maybe it will. But they just forgot everything. All that development, gone. It just feels like the game to me, right? And I get that this isn't like entirely what happened, but it's just how it feels to me. Is that it feels like the game created its own existential problem that was not or barely foreshadowed before this. And it created this existential problem to justify its own existence, to hit the delete button on everything so as not to compromise the other two games. It doesn't feel like a third installment to me. It feels like a 1.5 or something. Like something that bridges the gap between 1 and 2. It doesn't feel like its own thing. It feels like it exists to justify the other two games. It feels like where after 2 you were content with how both stories ended. And then it just feels like this character Noah pops up out of a molehill or something and says, hey you, it's important to keep letting these universes play out. I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine with that. That's cool. Like, I'm cool with that. I like how these stories are going. Keep going. And then Noah goes, well, here's a world and a bunch of characters and development and all these complex geopolitical structures that are going on. You like that? Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Well, throw it all away because we gotta let these other two world timelines continue to exist. I mean, okay, I didn't have a problem with that, but it just feels like everything you just showed me was just there to make me feel connected, to force me to throw it all away, when before any of this happened, I was content with going to the future and moving on, and not being stuck in the present or the past, because that was the idea behind 1 and 2. Like, I get the message they were going for, and maybe in like a vacuum, I wouldn't mind the execution. Again, like, this is all just subjective, but it's just how I feel about it. I can't change how I feel. I think, gameplay-wise, Xenoblade 3 is probably my favorite, or at least second favorite in the series, with 2. Story-wise now, the ending ruined it for me. It's my least favorite. It's of 1, 2, and 3, it's my least favorite. Like, I'm not gonna count X, because that's just fundamentally different, and I never finished X, so I can't really comment on that. But of 1, 2, and 3, my order would go 2, 1, 3. And there's some distance between 1 and 3. Because I have other storytelling issues with 3 that I'm not going to get into yet. I'll save that for the review. But yeah, the ending just didn't feel fulfilling to me. I hate endings, or I hate story moments that feel like they were designed just to get an emotional response out of you. And that's how 3's ending feels to me. It's how the entire game was designed to just make you feel sad at the end. It's like, I got the idea, I got what you were going for, I just don't like it. But hey, maybe you do like it. Maybe you don't like it even... Maybe you hate it even more than me. I would love to hear your thoughts, because I do not want to feel unfulfilled from Xenoblade 3. I don't want to. Maybe the DLC will salvage it for me, depending upon like what it covers. We'll see. I'm gonna go into the DLC with an open mind. But again, if it's just like a prequel, I don't care about it. Like, at all. For me, it has to be a sequel. Because otherwise I won't care. Because if it's a prequel, or if it's about the founders, that undermines the message of 3 to me. Though again, I don't even like that the message of 3 all that much. But no, I do, but it's complicated, right? It's complicated. And I don't think just having an ending that makes you think automatically makes it good, or an ending that makes you feel emotions automatically makes it good. I'm not an advocate of that. But again, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the ending of Xenoblade 3. What are your theories about where the DLC or even Xenoblade 4 gonna go? I want to hear your thoughts, because I hope that someone out there can change my mind on Xenoblade 3's ending. I truly do. Because I don't want to go away from this game not liking it because of the ending. I really don't. So if you have a perspective that you think I may have missed or may have overlooked, leave a comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts, get some good discussion going. Because the game itself, the journey, it was great. It really was. I have some issues with it, but the journey itself was really good. The ending, though, did not hit for me. It just didn't land. So I'm going to call the video there for the day. While you're down there leaving a comment, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to do some reviews, break down some other concepts of the game, what I think I did right, what I think I did wrong, and we'll go from there. I'm still a fan of Xenoblade at the end of the day. And hey, my biggest concern going into 3 was averted, so hey, it's not all negatives. So thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe out there, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.